Hello, welcome to this video. Today we're going to be having a look at some games. I'm currently following National Master Andrew McStone on chess.com. So let's see how he handles the black pieces here. So what's going on? So we have white with some quite far advanced pawns, space advantage, and also has the two bishops. We had, I think a bishop must have exchanged itself off here on d4, and black captured with the e pawn. This pawn looks a little bit dodgy, so it's probably going to be falling quite soon if the bishop moves, and then the queen will probably scoop it up. There's not really a good way to defend it, and we have but we've had some moves in the meantime. Black uses a pin, grabs this pawn. I'm surprised that white didn't see that, but okay, so what's white going to try and do here? He wants to open up the position so that the bishops are going to become useful, and meanwhile let's have a look at the material imbalance here. So black here, same number of minor pieces, but the pawns are just... black has, was that one or two? Just one extra pawn with that knight takes d5 move, and black looks pretty good here. It looks like he's just up a clean pawn. When we have this pawn resolving itself, black will have a majority on the queen side, which he'll look to use. Oh, but I guess the point is now that white is looking into this idea of queen takes b7. So this looks particularly dodgy for a couple of reasons. If queen takes b7, we'll probably just castle kingside, and then we're looking to trap the queen or make the queen go to the edge of the board, and it'll be out of play for a long time. So what are the long-term plans of each side? Well, you kind of highlighted what white wants to do. Okay, so this pawn on d4, it's going even deeper, and it's probably going to be lost soon. You hope that white's going to scoop it up, because otherwise, if all the pieces get exchanged, that pawn on e3 could be quite dangerous. Can he take on b7 now? No. Ooh, I don't know about this. I imagine that white reasoned that his king would be safe because all of his pieces are over here, but we do have opposite sides castling, so it's gonna be some sort of race to attack each other's king, and I feel that black, with all of these forcing moves, is much further ahead in this race to attack. So let's see. This pawn is pinned. Bishop keeping an eye on... Yeah, so this bishop is aimed at the king side. This rook is aimed at the king side. I'm sure at some point we're going to have rooks doubling on this file. White, on the other hand, is going to have to play g4. I think he's going to play that very soon. Oh, there we go. So we had a6, g4, and I reckon we're going to have b5. Yeah, b5 just to put more pieces towards the king. And well, g5 is logical. You didn't come to g4 to just stay there, you came to edge your way closer and weaken these pawns in front of the king. If you want to attack a kingside pawn grouping like this, you want to just make those pawns move in some way, and the best way of doing that is to create opportunities for exchanges with your own pawns. So here I think white's also now looking to play f5. There we go. The bishop has to make up its mind about where it's going. Or does it? I believe it does. Unless... And maybe we reason that this is actually quite good for black because we're having a sight of this e3 pawn. We're looking to maybe if we simplify the position, if black trades off pieces, then this pawn could be very telling if you get a rook behind it and another piece supporting it. Okay. Now this pawn is attacked. Oh, okay, so queen can take it with check. With check looks very tempting. And then following up, I feel like rook to e8 looks good. This knight is super active. Look at it go. This pawn is hanging though. We probably would play this rook. I don't know if you want to be looking at, if you want to be falling for this kind of fork idea. Knight would attack the king and the rook on c8. So rook. And I think we can just take this. Just captures. And there's no mating idea immediately. Yeah, there we go. There's no mating idea. And that queen trade you had to go in for. You had to take the queen because there was also a mate threat. So that was an interesting game. It highlights the idea of attacking on opposite sides of the board. Let's have a look at this opening, just see what happened exactly. Something slightly unorthodox, I think, with this knight to c6. So I have knight f6, which is a standard response. We could go into many things from here. Knight c6, and so normal moves are more like g6, e6 kind of things. I haven't seen this knight c6 idea before, so this is kind of interesting. I think this is maybe like a Nc6 idea. This is like asking your opponent to overextend their pawns in the center and then trying to play on the weak squares that are left behind once those pawns move forward. So let's see what happens. Knight to c3, getting ready to play e4, e5, so this is looking to make this pawn move forwards. White probably tempted by this because it gains space and it comes with tempo as well. And black has to react, and I think in these kind of setups black does normally play this kind of knight maneuvering to the g6 square, or maybe even the f5 square, because from f5 it will eye some dark squares, and once the pawns are all on light squares, the dark squares are the ones that are going to be weaker. You can see by doing this that let's get rid of these arrows here. Oop. You can see that by these pawns moving forwards that with white's weakened dark squares quite a lot, and it's quite nice that this bishop here has some very good options in the future. Black has had to give up some space, but oh, okay, so the knight comes to g8 instead. Knight e g8. This knight's doing a funny maneuver. But this is just a temporary home. It's going to come back out to e7. I guess it doesn't want to come to g6 because once you play h4, h5 is a good way to kick it out. So let's have a look. So just some natural developing moves. Black solved the problem of their dark square bishop. They got it outside of the pawn chain and it's very active, so white decides to chop it off. And I think it's a good point that you should be trying to scoop this guy up quite quickly. Well, it's not going to remain, it's not going to be defendable by another pawn very easily. If you play c5, then white can take en passant, and if you recapture, well, it looks like that actually black could defend it if given enough time, but this should be something that white should be able to target imminently. c5, I don't know about c5. I guess this is stopping black from playing c5 themselves, and the idea is that if black captures away from the center, then these pawns in the middle are going to be quite telling, because after, say, takes and takes, white has a very ideal pawn center here controlling good squares, and black's going to find it hard to target any of these pawns once f3 is in. And note that the pawns are on the light squares, and this does a good job. Once this pawn plays here, white does a good job of controlling a lot of the light squares, which kind of make this bishop here, it gives it a hard time trying to find something useful to do in this position. So yes, I feel that c5 has a good intention behind it. There might be something more direct. Let's have a look. Something more direct. I don't think castling is a bad idea at all. Castling with the idea of, well, you have played h4, and that's quite a committal move, but even rook to f1, f4, yeah, maybe even f4 right now. You've weakened g4, but this shouldn't be too much of a trouble once you get your king to the queen side and you open up the position. You should be able to attack quite hard. They're just some ideas that I'm coming up with at the moment. But in this position, I feel that white is absolutely fine. They have a good space. Black's going to have to maneuver their pieces because they have less space, and they're going to be spending a while trying to find ideal positions for all their pieces. I guess the one good thing is that black has their good bishop around. It works well with their pawns, and as we saw in this game, black took it quite slowly, and white missed this tactic right here. I guess either queen to e2, that avoids the tactic, and but maybe there's something more. Bishop g5, if you want to develop the bishop and avoid the tactic, that could be a good move. Not so sure about kingside castling now that you've made all of these pawn moves. Every pawn move weakens your kings. When your kings are behind those moved pawns, it could be quite fun for black if we had kingside castling. We could just see something like g4 and just trying to blast it open. Well, not g4 immediately, but in the future. So white missed this tactic. We had queen to b3, maybe looking at taking it at this pawn, but once black develops getting the final piece working. Oh, and of course we can't take right away because I reckon that after castling and you bring the rook over, this knight is going to be quite sensitive. So I feel like there's some tactics against white here because he has more pieces that are loose in the position, more pieces that are undefended. This one, knight to e3. this is a good post for the knight, and the point of this move, I guess, is also to stop white from castling. While this knight is here, it controls both of the directions that the king could go in, and this knight is well placed to stop it from going there. It's like the knight puts up two barriers either side of the king and says, nope, you will not go that way. And we have the rest of the game from this point on. I won't go over it too much, but it's kind of interesting. Once white castled this way and black castled this way, it was just a race trying to get the pawns moving. So we had white playing g4 and black played b5, and you can see how both sides are trying to take advantage of their opponent's king position. So it was quite an aggressive game, and hopefully I will see you next time. See ya.